Hello and welcome to the show. This week's Will It Roll is Gymkhana cars. Surprisingly, despite the fact that I'm not a massive fan of drifting, we have actually done a few Gymkhana videos. In fact, we've done 4, which surprised me actually we've done so many. So yes, we're going to use some of the cars which we have featured in these videos. Up first, it is a Subaru Impreza, which I have managed to crash because I'm useless. I'm not sure how I managed to spin that one there. This is a Subaru Impreza from the 10,000 credit Gymkhana challenge thing, which we did a while ago. Basically, we had to go in the auction house, buy a car for 10,000 credits, and then we had to go and try and Gymkhana with it. And this is the car which I bought, a Subaru Impreza, which I managed to spin already, and then promptly missed the curb with. It's a rather powerful four-wheel drive car. Doesn't handle particularly well. However, it hasn't actually been tuned for Gymkhana, so it was a little bit easier to drive than some of the cars that we'll feature later. As far as rolling goes, it got very, very close on the second attempt. Goddamn wall! It ruined all of the fun, as it normally does. But yeah, this is an R3 car. It's the highest PI of any of the vehicles that we have here, 772, 700 odd horsepower, and it's nearly gone. Oh, it has actually gone. That was some of the longest time on two wheels I think we've had a car. It did technically roll, as I've said many a time, on Will It Roll, for a car to have counted to have rolled, it has to have gone onto its roof. Although on this car it spends about a millisecond on its roof, so I had to go again. And I think this is the next time, and that's better. It does a little bit of breakdancing and lands it. There we go. The first Subaru Impreza has been rolled. Very straightforward. Actually, I'm not sure what parts are on that car, as it was bought from the auction house. Up next, it is a Ford Fiesta. This is the first Gymkhana car. When we did the first Gymkhana challenge, this is the car that Daniel built. It doesn't have the paint job. I think he used a Chem Block paint job on this car because it was a storefront paint job, so he couldn't gift that. But the tune and everything, we believe is the same. It is possible that some of these tunes and parts have slightly altered, as these are the cars that are in our garage now. It's like a year ago, or probably even more than that, than when we did the Gymkhana challenge with these. So it is possible that the parts might be slightly different. We think we've got the right cars for some of these, but it could be a little bit wrong. Anyway, I was going to try again with the Fiesta. This one here is difficult to drive. It is set up for Gymkhana. However, it is not difficult to roll, as that is the second attempt, and it is not the most spectacular of rolls. However, it is broken. It looks very odd with a front splitter and not a rear wing on it. It looks very strange. I mean, the rear wing is silly enough as it is, but with just the front splitter on it, it's a very strange sight, this Ford Fiesta. Either way, another very, very straightforward car to roll. Up next, we have an Audi RS2 Advance. This is from the Improbable Gymkhana cars. This was the best of the Improbable Gymkhana cars. I think that made sense in there somewhere. It has got another 700 plus horsepower in this thing. First attempt, it got very sideways, but it didn't roll. Now, as I mentioned briefly before, the real difficulty with these cars is actually just getting them stopped and turned and hit the curb correctly, because these are not built to drive normal corners. They're built to be going sideways. With the exception of the first car that was just bought that was terribly understeering, these have all been tuned for Gymkhana. However, the Audi, again, I just had to touch the curb and it flipped and smashed into the wall and it lost a bumper. So the Audi is fairly straightforward to roll again, although it is very difficult to try and roll them through the chicane, as they just really don't handle very well. We have another Subaru Impreza. Normally I wouldn't do two of the same cars. However, this is the one which Daniel used in the Time Attack challenge. It was last week or sometime or other. I was interested to see how this would compare to the other car. This one here is a purpose-built, set-up Gymkhana car, whereas the other one was a random high-powered Impreza I bought off the storefront that I hoped would work. Whereas this is all purpose-built. The downsides are it is incredibly hard to drive. These things really do not handle very well, they do not turn very well, and they do not stop very well because of the way they are set up to slide about. As far as rolling goes, oddly this was proving to be very difficult. We're going to go for an onboard shot here just to show you how far on its side it goes and still doesn't roll. Look at that. That is a long way on its side. Although you're not going to be able to hear it, I doubt you'll be able to hear it. You can actually hear the front splitter scraping on the floor when it goes up on its side. Now I believe, I'm just looking at the the pictures of the two cars side by side in my garage, they have slightly different front bumpers, and that could be the difference between them. They also weigh slightly different. I believe they have a different combination of parts, as one's 20-30 psi higher than the other. I think the front splitter is what's making the difference here between these two. It could also be upgrades. As I said, I don't know about the first Impreza, but this one goes very far on its side. Look at that, and still doesn't roll. It's the front splitter getting caught on the floor. I think it again could be other issues, but I think that is the main problem with this car, the main reason why it isn't rolling over. So I tried some more, and it was getting closer. It was very close, and then the wall screwed it over again. I don't know how it went that far and didn't roll over. It's like once it goes up on its side, it seems to just stay there for a really long time. It's kind of odd how long it stays up on its side, and again, then the wall screwed it over. They were one after the other. I gave up trying to go through the chicane because this car just wouldn't turn. It just doesn't have the grip, the handling, whatever, to get around that corner at any speed. So I was coming from this direction where it is easier. This time the wall actually assisted it. It did end up on its roof. It did skid along on its roof, so I'm counting that. It's good enough for me. But yeah, you just can't carry enough speed through the chicane because of the way the car's built. You just can't do it. So I gave up with that. I was approaching it from the straight. Up next we have my Hyundai Veloster, I think is how it's pronounced, I'm not sure. This is a fantastic Gymkhana car. This really is very good for Gymkhanaing, the way this one's been set up. It was pure luck, the setup on this. I mentioned before, it was literally a case of press buttons and suddenly it worked, so I didn't change it anymore. I don't know how I came to it, but there we go. As far as rolling goes, this one here was also quite awkward. It was fairly similar to the Impreza, really. It was difficult to steer, difficult to hit the curb, as you see there. It was also very, very difficult to stop and doesn't turn very well when it's not sliding, which meant just aiming at the target was hard enough. I did try a few times with this car, going through the chicane just in case, but even then it's just too much of too unreliable, too tricky to actually hit that fine point on the curb. So I ended up just resorting to going from this direction. It was getting closer. Again, it was very odd with these cars in the way that after you keep trying and trying, and every time it seemed to go further and further over. Very odd, not normal like that with these. And again, it's getting closer. This time it scraped its window, scraped the side of it, lost most of the paintwork, and the blooming wall has scuppered that plan. Again, that wall has caused so many problems for rolling cars, but the curb is the biggest curb there is. This time around, it did end up on its roof very briefly and kind of danced about, and yeah, not the cleanest of rolls. I will be honest when it comes to will it roll, but it did go on its roof briefly, and it's taken all of the paint off. Just all of the paint has vanished from the car. That's quite a lot of bodywork damage. We move on to our final car. When I found this in my garage, I just had to use it. This is a 700 horsepower Nissan Micra. Yes, you did hear that correctly, because the world needs more silliness. This thing's ridiculous. This again was built for the improbable Gymkhana cars, as it goes very, very sideways through there. Jesus, it's a mental thing. It wasn't actually that bad when it comes to Gymkhana. This is not hard to roll, like at all. And there we go. First attempt, even despite the wonky handling. There's all sorts of dancing going on there. Even despite the wonky handling, you just touch the curb and it falls over. And yeah, very, very straightforward car to roll. It had to be rolled. Once I found this, it has to be rolled. The hideous, hideous Nissan Micra. Also, the paint's gone on the side of it as well. Anyway, that is it for this week's Will It's Rolled. Gymkhana cars, very easy to roll, as it turns out. I suspect it's a combination of race suspension. Not sure about the tyres. Everybody does different things with the tyres. But it's race suspension, I suspect, fairly stiff suspension, possibly. But again, it's all different things with different cars. So, yeah. They are very, very easy to roll, and I'm not 100% sure why. I guess all the cars we are using are kind of higher centre of mass. They're not really the sort of low-slung sports cars. So maybe that comes into effect as well. Now, for next week's Will It Roll, I can't decide what I'm going to do, so I'm going to ask you guys to cast your vote in the comment section. It is either going to be Will It Roll with some of my versus the community cars. I saw that suggested. That seems quite interesting. So if you want to see me try and roll some of the cars that I've built for the versus the community races, then leave a comment and leave a comment with what cars from that you would like to see me roll, because there's so many I couldn't possibly do all of them. It's either that or it's going to be on Grand Theft Auto 5. I know I said I wouldn't do a Will It Roll on there. However, I can do a Will It Roll with some of the very, very silly vehicles. And I will leave that to your imagination as to what vehicles I'm going to be using for that. If you would like... hold on, wait, my brain is just going to recover, give it a minute. If you would like to, or which one of them you would like to see, please leave in the comments section, and the most voted for, most commented, whatever, one will be in the video next week. However, that is it for today, so thank you very much for watching, and until next time, goodbye.